listener production.
Hi, Sasha Barbagat with you. Welcome to The Briefing. Elon Musk is the tech giant behind SpaceX and he's the CEO of Tesla. He's also the new face of government efficiency in the US. But who is he really?
Elon is known for never sleeping. He's just sort of like very eclectic and not what you would call a traditional billionaire with like all the trappings of certain billionaires in their homes or whatever.
Musk calls himself Trump's first buddy and their bromance has captured the world's attention. So today we're digging deeper into the man who has managed to weasel his way into the globe's most powerful office, and we find out how he got there. That's coming up in the second half of this episode. First, let's get into the headlines with Chris Spiru. It is Wednesday, the 5th of February.
Morning, Sash. Morning, everybody. The AI chatbot that wiped almost $1 trillion off Wall Street last week will be banned from all Australian government computers and phones. The Albanese government's crackdown on DeepSeek comes after intelligence warned it poses an unacceptable risk to national security. Home Affairs Minister Tony Burke says the decision was not because the app is Chinese.
Yeah, nevertheless, the decision comes almost 2 years after Labor banned TikTok, which is another Chinese-owned app, from government devices over security and privacy concerns. Now, there have been recent moves against DeepSeek in Taiwan, Italy, and at some federal US agencies like the Pentagon and NASA. All government bodies here, except corporate organisations like Ozpost and the ABC, will now be forced to remove the AI chatbot from their federal devices and prove to Home Affairs that they have actually done that. But government employees will still be allowed to use it on their own personal devices.
Yeah, and if you're left scratching your head going, I kind of know I've heard about DeepSeek, but I don't know anything about it. We did deep dive it last week. The link to that episode will be in the description of this episode, but you can also just search DeepSeek in your feed and that will pop up. Interestingly though, Sash, since DeepSeek kind of burst onto the scene last week, I know for a lot of people in Silicon Valley and the tech world, they were like, this isn't anything new, but for us everyday folk, we were like, what is this? Experts have kind of dug into its privacy policy, and what they've understood is that this app can access everything on your device. So while the ban is limited to government devices, a lot of tech experts are saying, the public should be taking note of what's going on here. Interestingly also, there has been chatter around the constraints and accuracy of the chatbot. If you do ask it about information that's critical of the Chinese government, i.e. Tiananmen Square, it'll shoot out a reply that says, sorry, that's beyond my current scope. Let's talk about something else. So, a welcome move by government, I guess.
China has retaliated against Donald Trump's tariffs on its imports, announcing its own levies against American products. So a reminder, the US announced it'd be slapping all Chinese imports with a 10% tariff, with that order coming into effect Tuesday, local time. Beijing has now responded with a 15% tax on coal and liquefied natural gas products and a 10% tariff on crude oil, agricultural machinery and utes. So far, this is all following the same playbook as what we saw happen in Canada and Mexico, with both countries announcing retaliatory tariffs before meeting with the US president and agreeing to a deal. And what we've seen there now is that US tariffs have been paused for 30 days and they could be scrapped altogether. Now, that could still happen in this case with China, with the White House confirming Trump is expected to speak with President Xi Jinping in the coming days.
Meantime, back home, it's been revealed the Department of Foreign Affairs was left scrambling to understand what impacts Trump's tariffs could have on Australia, and that was in the days after he was elected. Talking points prepared by DFAT and sent out to government officials, including the PM's office, have been obtained and released by The Guardian under Freedom of Information laws. At the time, DFAT advised it was unclear if Australia would be hit by the levies and encouraged ministers to talk up our countries being the closest of partners across defence, foreign policy, climate and trade.
Yeah, so interesting to see that DFAT was kind of giving this advice to be like, it's unclear. Use that line, it's unclear. But the Treasurer's recent rhetoric has been, we're well placed. We're well placed to deal with it. He's been pretty vague. Some political commentators are saying, well, we don't know, and that's the problem. And that is clear from this DFAT memo that was obtained. Look, some ideas that are being floated around as to what could potentially happen. The New South Wales Premier, Chris Minns, actually said we could see cheaper manufacturing products dumped in Australia with the tariffs on China because it's trying to offload them and get rid of them somewhere else. There are also fears that our products like aluminium and steel could again be in Trump's sights because during his first term as president, he threatened trade barriers on Australian exports, including aluminium and steel. Now, the Trade Minister, Don Farrell, has said he is seeking urgent talks with his American counterpart to discuss Australia's trade relationship and to make the case for exemptions to any tariffs. It does seem like, though, that Trump is using this as a bargaining chip. He has at least partway achieved what he wanted. Mexico is sending troops to the border, 10,000 troops to the border. Canada is promising to step up its fight against the fentanyl trade. So, whether he's doing this to actually increase manufacturing in the US versus score political points overseas, who knows?
The FBI has been called in to help Aussie police build its case against a Melbourne graffiti artist. Images of Pam the Bird have been peppered across Melbourne in recent months, including on the Novotel at South Wharf, the Cheese Stick column on the City Link, and the Flinders Street Station clock tower. The image has become a bit of an icon, with an Instagram page promoting the works racking up over 75,000 followers. Victoria Police think they've caught the artist, 21-year-old Jackson Gibson Burrell, and they think he might be the one behind that Insta account.
Well, that's where the FBI could come in. Local authorities are hoping the Bureau will help get them a warrant to search Meta, and that's so that they can confirm whether Gibson Burrell is indeed running the page. Now, the estimated cost of removing this graffiti is up to $200,000, according to VicPol. This is all playing out in court at the moment. The most expensive job is going to be removing Pam from the 100-metre high Novotel building at South Wharf, and that alone is projected to cost $36,000. Now, police don't think there are any copycat artists spreading images of Pam because of the complicated nature of where the works are painted. On the Novotel, it's really high up that building. We've seen it on other really high, tall structures that would require someone who knew what they were doing and who was committed to spreading this particular image. And Gibson Burrell, it's worth noting, is facing more than 50 charges, not just for these vandalism, alleged vandalism offences, also things like theft. So pretty serious accusations against him at the moment. We'll see if the FBI gets that warrant for VicPol to search Meta.
And Vladimir Putin has signed a decree ordering a revival of Intervision, a Soviet-era alternative to Eurovision, first launched in the 1960s. The Russian president saying it will help his nation in its efforts to counter the decadence of modern Western culture. The last time Russia competed in the actual Eurovision contest was in 2021, before it was excluded from the competition following its 2022 invasion of Ukraine.
Yeah, based on planning documents, it's understood Intervision will be a stark contrast to the European version of the singing comp, emphasising traditional, universal, spiritual and family values, as opposed to what we see at Eurovision, which is very camp and very queer themed. Artists involved in the Russian alternative will be banned from performing political songs. They'll also be told they can't call for violence or humiliate the, quote, honour and dignity of society, whatever that means. And it's expected countries like China, Cuba, Brazil, as well as former Soviet republics like Kazakhstan, Azerbaijan and Belarus could all take part. I've ended up on the Soviet-era architecture side of TikTok lately.
Okay, explain.
Well, this is just giving me... communist architecture, but also, communist messaging from the 60s was very specific. And I don't know, this is just giving me such communist era vibes. And it's a Soviet era show. I would actually want to tune in to see if it gave me those vibes in real life, whether it's going to be kind of serious and very pro-Russia and pro-communism. I don't know, it's weird.
Yeah, but what you shouldn't be keeping your eyes off is Eurovision this year, which is in Switzerland this year in May.
I'm not a Eurovision girly. No. You can try and sell me on it because I know you are probably the biggest Eurovision fan in this building.
Correct. So Australia, we've been taking part, competing since 2015, which is, one of the big reasons I love it. I mean, I loved it before then, but let's not get into that. We are taking part in the second semi-final, which is on Friday the 16th of May. You need to set your alarms very, very early because that'll play super early our time. We are yet to announce who is representing us. Obviously, we have had big names like Guy Sebastian, Dummy Im, Jess Malboy representing us in the past. This year, again, like I said, hasn't been named. Sacha Bagat.
Oh, God.
Who's your pick?
Oh, well, I mean, maybe I would like to see us put up another double act. I think it was last year that we had a double act.
We had Electric Fields last year.
Thanks. And I reckon the Veronicas could actually have a good. How good would the Veronicas be?
Dude, that's a really good.
It's a good one, isn't it?
It's actually a good one.
It's really good.
It beats who? Like my dream Eurovision person for Australia has always been Delta Goodrem.
Yeah,
I just think someone with vocals like that will do our nation proud.
Yawn.
I know it's a predictable
Delta,
one, but
our
I'd love
most
to see
boring export. No,
How
she's
very
great.
dare you.
I was a big fan of Innocent Ice.
Oh, as were a lot of us.
Okay, we digress. Chris, thank you. Next up, we are getting into our deep dive, finding out who is Elon Musk.
Who is Elon Musk? The tech billionaire best known for running Tesla and SpaceX is said to be one of the most powerful men in the world. He became a household name because of his tech accomplishments, but since then, his politics, opinions, actions, and bromances he's had with presidents over the years have taken front and centre. So who is he behind closed doors? And how did he become the Elon Musk we know today? Mike Isaac is a technology correspondent for the New York Times based in San Francisco. Mike, how powerful is Elon Musk?
I think he's up there as one of the most powerful people in the world right now. As we speak, he is currently digging through some of the most important files and parts of American government and untold trillions of dollars owned by Americans. So I think I would say he's up there in the pantheon of powerful people right now.
Okay, can you tell me a bit about Musk's family? Who are his parents and how did he grow up?
Sure. So I think it's pretty fair to say he grew up as a child of privilege in South Africa. His father was a sort of wealthy industrialist, a hand in a bunch of different industries, but I would say, mining and sort of there were certain things around emeralds that I think have been long bandied about that. But in any case, they had money growing up. He came from a family that kind of was split apart. His mom and his dad eventually split up. He decided to go live with his dad, which he later said he regretted. His dad was very hard on him. And I think that probably played into some of Elon's, let's say, entrepreneurial pursuits later on and his aggressiveness in work. Stayed in South Africa for a number of years until he decided to make his way out to Silicon Valley when he grew up.
Can you tell me then, how did Elon get into tech and business? Before, everyone knows him for Tesla and SpaceX. What other companies was he part of and how did he jump into this tech world?
No one really knows, actually probably no one knows the name now, but he founded a company years and years ago called Zip2, which was early internet idea of what payments should look like online. Well, kind of actually it was an online directory for finding things. This was before Google was really huge. This was like a pre-internet era where things were still being sorted out. It didn't work out, but it did get acquired by PayPal, which was obviously very consequential in how people paid for things online. And even back then, that was still like a nascent idea. Like, how do you buy stuff online? Where are you going to do it? And he decided to use that money to parlay it into basically the other things he was going to do. So whether it was getting into Tesla or eventually SpaceX, he kept sort of like making these early money, parlaying that into something bigger and bigger, and then landing, as we discussed, at the top, I guess is what I would say.
So where did Elon study then? How did he just jump in and, found all these companies? Was he a dropout like some of the big tech people we always hear about? Or did he actually finish studies and then go, you know what, I'm going to be this businessman?
He was angling to go to Stanford in California, in the Bay Area where I live. And, that was, I guess, considered the Ivy League of the West, one of those like big tech feeder schools, that one in UC Berkeley, which is my alma mater, so I prefer Berkeley. That was his goal, and he did what is now like a very similar sort of familiar story of tech founders. He didn't attend the university, sort of like, but he did stick around in the Stanford area, which I think, people would argue, aside from the value of a liberal arts education, just being in that environment is very valuable, especially at that point in time for nascent sort of .com type businesses, and so he got to meet, what is now known as like the PayPal mafia, right? All these people who went out to form these other businesses that would also change the world, whether it's the Peter Thiels of the world or Reid Hoffman, or just a number of like really big Silicon Valley names who would go on to build these huge businesses. And so he didn't do the sort of straight and narrow path of like rigorous studies and graduating with honors, blah, blah, blah. But I think that is also part of his founding mythos that attracts a lot of young men to him, like maybe I too could found world-changing companies if, even though I'm, failing out of school or whatever, as long as I work hard enough. And I think that sort of hustle culture mentality is really prevalent out here right now.
Yeah, so it sounds like he was networking with the right people, putting himself in the circles where he wanted to be, where he saw people that like, yeah, I can do that and we can work together. One thing I want to ask is Tesla. Is he really the founder of Tesla?
So I think it is a long and ongoing controversy. He didn't really found it. I think now he's like considered a co-founder, but like he came in and pushed out the other people, but is still very aggressive on like trying to claim he's the only one, which is just not true. Like there are multiple people that were a part of this effort who have gone on to do other things. But I think part of Musk's tenacity and stubbornness is often like reshaping what history looks like, and so like a lot of retelling in his own words. I think he's kind of an unreliable narrator on a lot of that history, and like there are other people who are responsible for building this company for sure.
So when did Musk start to become a big name in Silicon Valley? When did people start to recognize him and be like, who is this guy?
PayPal was significant, but I think Tesla really put him on the map, right? That combined with, Elon has a specific type of charisma is what I would say. Like he's definitely not the charming talk show host type of charisma, but I think he's got this sort of nerd charisma, nerd cred that resonates with a lot of Valley types, engineering types who aspire to this sort of thing. Like I'm smart, I'm not like a jock or whatever, but I could use this to build these world-changing technologies. And I think Tesla really put him on the map for that sort of thing.
So how much do you think then, speaking of that nerd talk and kind of being this idol for so many people like that, how much do you think Silicon Valley shaped him? Or is it the other way around? Has he now shaped the value system in Silicon Valley?
No, I think it's both, honestly. I think people out here definitely have certain streaks that are kind of, not, I wouldn't say universal, but really are predominant in a lot of founders out here, right? There's libertarian leanings, smaller government is generally what they prefer. They don't like regulation. They don't like it when the government comes down on them for telling them they can't do certain things, especially because all of the idea of innovation is to sort of outpace older ways of doing things and older systems. And so Silicon Valley sort of ideals are founded on we should break the mold and not sort of ask for forgiveness, not permission, or in this case, not even ask for forgiveness this time. And so I think that has been a long time theme of Silicon Valley, especially with, sort of this idea of we want to change the world and do it for the better. And I think Elon has absorbed a lot of that, especially in the way he talks about, electric cars and the environment and going to Mars and things like that, right? Like it's all very dreamer talk. Now, that said, he has definitely, as his stature has grown, absolutely sort of rubbed off on the Valley, on how people look at startups and founders, how particularly young men sort of like approach business, very aggressive, Elon is known for never sleeping. I don't think he has like permanent residences that often. You know, he sleeps on friends' couches. He's just sort of like very eclectic and not what you would call a traditional billionaire with like all the trappings of certain billionaires in their homes or whatever. And I think that's really attractive to a lot of young men out here. They're like, oh, I could be a weirdo in a hacker house with, 15 different people in bunk beds and create the next world changing company. And that's great. I think his politics now, especially there's sort of his rightward shift in the past few years is rubbing off on a number of young men out here for sure. Silicon Valley is definitely predominantly liberal and left-leaning, but there are certain, factions that are trending more towards the right around certain social issues, definitely around fiscal policy. And that I think is growing with time, especially as Trump has come into power and Elon is sort of embracing Trump, as well as basically all the other tech CEOs are embracing Trump as well.
Yeah, it's funny there how you mentioned before the tech world doesn't really like when government kind of encroaches on their space or tries to tell them what to do. When did Elon start to first show signs of being interested in politics? And did anyone on the ground in the tech world think that he'd get as far as he did right now?
I think a lot of people are very shocked that he's basically co-running parts of the government right now in the United States. But folks forget, like, he had a very close relationship with President Obama not that long ago. And he had to, right? Like, he has a lot of government contracts because of SpaceX, the rocket company that he's building there. They basically want to privatize space exploration, especially as the American government has sort of defunded NASA over the years. So he has strong ties with government through both major political parties here. And Tesla in particular benefited from so many subsidies under the Obama administration because of Obama's insistence on environment, clean energy, sort of pushing those initiatives. And Tesla deeply benefited from that and probably could not have grown into the company that it is today without it, which is its own funny form of irony considering on how much they seem to dislike government now, how much Elon seems to dislike government. But he's been deeply tied to different administrations over the years. I think this is the difference here under Trump is just how much power and control he seems to have this time, whereas in past administrations, he was more at the mercy of certainly Democratic lawmakers and then President Obama in the past.
Yeah, and historically, Musk has confessed to being a left libertarian, saying he voted for Barack Obama in 2008 and 2012, Hillary Clinton in 2016, and Joe Biden in 2020. What changed?
I think his story probably parallels with a lot of bigger tech moguls out here, even Mark Zuckerberg, who grew up as a sort of hacker hoodie guy with generally center-left values. And I think all of these guys, as they have aged, as they have had to deal with government more, and have become more cynical and disillusioned through that, especially in 2016 and beyond when the American government started coming after them more. And my thesis is that the government basically appreciated how important and powerful tech was going to be for the future and started being more critical after years of not really being that critical, whether it was through breaking up monopolies or halting big mergers like Facebook buying Instagram. They weren't really doing that for a long time. And I think after 2016, the government started really coming down more hard on tech figures, especially under the Biden administration. And so now we're seeing the reaction to that from a lot of these tech folks who may still have socially liberal values to some degree, although there are limits to that for them as well. But I think probably more fiscally conservative than even before.
So what has the reaction on the ground in the tech world been to Musk now leading the Department of Government Efficiency?
Or Doge. Which is a patently absurd name. But I think, it's like this, it's a mix. Like, there are a lot of still liberal tech folks here who are pretty scared because it's like he's unelected official in a non-governmental role, but as recent news reports have stated, like this team of like essentially 21-year-old kids are sort of digging around in really important government programs, which have, trillions of dollars in, Social Security funding, different types of funds that that fund grants or other sort of like programs here. And they're looking to eliminate what they see as waste, which is like, look, there are some people in the Valley who think that's a good thing. There's some people who are like, hey, government is inefficient and we need to bring that. We need to bring fresh eyes in here and start hacking it away. And then there are other folks who are like, these are not folks I've elected. Like, why are they digging around in here? But it's a real messy time right now for sure.
And do you think that he could ever run for president?
Oh my gosh. I would not be shocked. I feel like anything is possible at this point. Like a Mr. Beast presidency would not shock me at this point. So Elon Musk as a president definitely wouldn't shock me. I think really popular cults of personality tend to do well in national politics these days. I think Democrats are not really prepared for that over here because they don't have similar corollaries to a Trump or a Musk or whatever. One of the big discussions over here has been Joe Rogan is this huge personality over here, often embraced by libertarians or right-leaning young men especially. And so there's no Joe Rogan of the left is what they keep looking for or something. And I still don't think that figure has emerged. So like until that happens, President Musk, I would not be shocked if we see at least that option on the ballot someday. Who knows?
Mike, thanks so much for joining us on The Briefing.
Thank you for having me.
That was Mike Isaac there, tech correspondent for the New York Times. And it'll be interesting to see how much influence Elon has over this Trump presidency. And the reaction from the Silicon Valley, as we talked about in that chat, they don't really like the government stepping in or encroaching on their space and development when it comes to laws and policies and tech development. So it'll definitely be one to watch over his current presidency. But that's it for this chat. Before you go, though, we'd love it if you could share this app with someone else you think might enjoy it as well. It's really the easiest way you can support us so we can keep doing interviews just like this one. And you can check us out on Instagram at The Briefing Podcast and on TikTok and YouTube. Just search for Listener Newsroom. I'm Helen Smith. See you next time.
Listener.